And welcome back to Newsmakers, where we meet people making the news. This time of year, we start having a lot of people running for office, running to be an elected official. Some people call them politicians. I don't like that. Politicians, one who trades off stuff to get something they want. But a true statesman, people going out to serve their community, that's who we like to talk to here. We're going to have one coming up in a minute. Running for Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. It's a state constitutional office. Every county in the state has a superintendent of schools elected by that county, and it's an official position. They oversee education from the college level, from the community college level, all the way down to elementary schools. Every school district has to check in with the county superintendent of schools. My high school principal became county superintendent. Pete Mias served for quite a few years, and he was a great leader for Fresno. We've lost him a few years back. After him was Larry Powell, another old friend of mine from church. Went to church with Larry Powell, and his wife Dot Powell was a principal over at our school, Daly School. And then now, these past few years, Jim Uvino has been superintendent. All of them have just done a really good job, and I think done really good for our schools. We have looked around. We decided to ask somebody in who is from who's running for that office. And we've known Daren Miller for some time. Dr. Daren Miller, he's an educator. He's been around town for a few years. And congratulations on entering the race.
Thank you.
You
Thank you.
seem like a good guy for the job.
I appreciate that. Yeah. So can I multiply your votes to get me in office?
One thing I could tell you, because we have a lot of people in here running for different congressional seats and stuff. And, they mix those seats up like crazy. Nobody knows what the district they're in. But certainly I'm in the district that I could vote for you. Anybody in Fresno County that's registered to vote can vote for you.
That's correct. This is a first time I'm venturing out into a countywide election. Okay. And so, as you said, every registered voter from Huntington Lake up at the top of the mountains all the way out to Kalinga. If you live in Fresno County, you're going to be able to vote in this election.
Sanger, what's that, Kalinga out there?
Kalinga, I don't know what, San Joaquin, Lemore's in Kings County.
San Joaquin, yeah. Now, I need to know, because it's one of the most important jobs in Fresno County. And it's a big job. Not a lot of people hear about it who are not in education.
Sometimes people get it confused. And so the county superintendent of schools has a lot of influence. And as you said, all 32 school districts that are in the county
32, wow.
Ultimately respond and are accountable back to the superintendent's office. But each school district has its own administration, has their own superintendent and their board and those type of things. And the county superintendent doesn't come in and supersede or override any of those decisions. He basically provides a support, unless it's a manage or a fiscal types of issues, those type of things, and districts get into financial problems, then the county will come in to be able to support them and help them. But for the most part, the county superintendent is about advocacy. It's about advocating at the state level for issues and concerns that are addressed, that are needs that are here in the Central Valley, as well as being able to outreach to local businesses and other community-based organizations to be able to support what goes on in education throughout the county.
Now, does the superintendent have some schools or classes that they put on?
They do. So one of the areas that the county is responsible for is what we refer to as the medically fragile. So we've got some students who just physically, because of different diseases that they have and ailments, can't come to a school site, and so we're responsible for making sure that their educational needs are met.
Those fall to the county superintendent.
If their local school district is not set up for them to be able to provide those educational services, then it falls onto the responsibilities of the county. The other side of the ledger is our students who have issues. So our students who are being expelled for different reasons from their home school districts. There's an opportunity and a school placement for that particular type of student, as well as the students who are incarcerated, the students who are out at the juvenile justice
that falls under the county superintendent.
The teachers and the teachers and the education that's provided out there is also under the guise of the county superintendent.
Now let me ask you this, because I've always been confused about this. You kind of oversee, you said 32 school districts. Who knew there's 32 in Fresno County, right?
Right.
But there are. What about charter schools? Who do they fall under?
Well, we do have some charter schools that are chartered under the county.
Okay.
And if they're chartered through the county, superintendent's office, then they would be responsible. We would be responsible. So I guess the best example I can give you is the new school, and the name escapes me, but it's the new school. It's a charter school that's over there across the street from San Joaquin Memorial. Jim Uvino just built that fabulous complex that's there. So all of the students that are attending school there is actually being supported directly by Fresno County. Other charter schools are chartered through their own individual school districts. So Fresno Unified, Sierra Unified, San Joaquin, Golden Plains, all have, I should say all, but those school districts also have the ability to have charter schools. Those charter schools would be responsible back to those individual districts. Ultimately, they would be still under the guise of the county superintendent, but not directly.
Now, here's something else that people may not realize. Like I said, a lot of people haven't heard of the county superintendent of schools or know what he does, but it's a lot. We're getting a feel for it. But you would also have a school board too under you, a board.
Correct, and it's unique because in the other 32 school districts, the board's one employee that they have is the superintendent, whereas in the county structure it's different. There's 5 elected representatives for the 5 districts or 5 areas that we have in the county, but just like the superintendent, they're elected. Right. And so they work together. It's great if the board and the superintendent are working together, but ultimately the superintendent does not work for that board. He works for the public. He works for the people who have elected and put him in that office.
And does that board have to approve some of your actions or a lot of your actions?
It depends. And it kind of depends on where it is and what it is. But there's a lot of autonomy that goes with the superintendent of schools. And Jim has provided a lot of leadership in that area. He does not necessarily need approval of the board members, but it would be best if you have their support going forward, because you don't want to have an adversarial relationship with the board. That doesn't benefit anyone.
Now the twist I'm trying to lead us into here is there's a Fresno County Superintendent of Schools, and then the board is called the Fresno County
Board of Education.
And you were on that board.
I did serve on that board for 2 years.
So you're not coming out in here blind. You got some experience at the board level.
Correct.
And also you're an administrator. You have a doctorate in education
yeah.
And a credential. Tell me about your credential.
I have 2 credentials issued by the state of California. I am a credentialed counselor, school counselor, as well as a school administrator. Right. And I have carried both of those credentials issued by the state of California. And so in order to run for this position, you have to be a credentialed administrator. So you have to have an administrative credential.
And you
I do have that.
So
yeah,
you are uniquely qualified for this position.
Yeah,
you're on the board, so you have a lot of experience,
correct.
And then a lot of experience teaching and counseling and all kinds of stuff.
Well, most of my experience in education has not been in teaching. I taught very briefly back in the beginning. Most of my tenure, my 33 plus years, 30 of them have been in management. So in the counseling, vice principals, principalships, and doing some adjunct counseling, and I've worked as a professor at Fresno City College in the past. And so I'm not necessarily a classroom teacher per se, but I've been around education in the management area for more than 3 decades. That's a long time.
That's a long time. Look at there's a picture of you in front of the County Board of Education, and that could be your office building someday soon. And what can people do if they want to? You have to have a campaign, I guess.
Correct.
What do people want to get involved and say, how can we help? What can we do?
Well, right now we're still putting everything together. I did not make the announcement that I was going to be running until some people will know that I've been a caretaker for my parents for about the last 2 years. And my dad passed on January 13th. We had his services on February 4th. And I was waiting. Jimmy Uvino made his announcement that he was retiring in the midst of all that. So I waited until after I handled the business with the family to be able to make that announcement. And so the good part about it is I've got former campaign team members who've agreed to be on board right now. We're working on getting all of our social media, our website and all the social media presence up. If anyone wanted to reach out to me, they could get me at electdarenmiller@gmail.com. Remember, Daren is spelled with 1 R, so that's elect, Daren with 1 R, Miller@gmail.com. That's the best way to reach out to me right now.
By the way, if it's okay with you, I'm going to keep that email address on my desk. If you guys want to reach Daren Miller, you didn't write that down, call me. I'll give you his direct email address.
And I don't mind giving you my direct campaign phone number. It's also 559-202-3969.
3969.
Yeah.
We're almost out of time, but are there any giant challenges that Fresno County schools are facing What's going to be your big challenge? If you
I
get
think
in
one of the
office?
biggest challenges that has come up is COVID, but COVID in a different means. And what I mean by that is when COVID came in, schools had to shut down. They had to go to distance learning. And we're finding out that we were not prepared as a county, even as a city, to be able to go to online educational format. And so a lot of school districts have been scrambling to get that in place. But one of the issues is we have a very underwhelming infrastructure as far as technology. And I think that would be one of the biggest things that the next superintendent is going to need to take on, is making sure that we have broadband wireless access throughout the county very
Nobody could have
readily.
predicted this coming
Right,
up.
right.
Now, a lot of us learned a lot during COVID as far as technology, things we've never had to do before, things parents never had to do before, teachers never had to do before. There's a big learning curve, and I guess you're saying that'll be part of your administration, is getting ready for that in the future. Could you ever see us going to maybe fewer days in the classroom and more days in the online?
Yeah, I mean, I believe that now that we've been introduced to online learning and all the positives that have come around that and all the issues that we've got, it's here to stay. How that's going to work, I think that's what we're going to be developing over the next decade. What is the best way? Because one of the major downsides for me is the socialization, or the absence of the socialization that goes on, especially with our younger students. In kindergarten, in first grade, second grade, you're learning to work together collaboratively. You're working with others. You're working with adults who are not actually your parents or your caretaker. How do you get that exchange through a video screen? And I think that's one of the biggest concerns that I would have is how do we include that socialization into our online piece?
I always say, how do you get a bunch of second graders to behave? How do you get a bunch of second graders to behave when they're all on a Zoom call? So I don't know. But I bet this period's going to be something that is studied by educational scholars, people who teach teachers. And by the way, I was a college teacher. That's my training. And then when you study to become a college teacher, they never teach you how to teach. They just give you a roll sheet and you go in and teach. But the kindergarten K-12 teachers, they go through a lot of training, and I would imagine there's going to be a lot more things to train people for the future.
And it's the new normal, and we can fight it all we want to, but I believe that there's going to be aspects of online learning in the curriculum K-12 going forward, actually even preschool going forward. And so how do we utilize this tool to make sure that it benefits our users, the students who are using it, as well as the teachers who are providing that instruction?
Very good. Well, I forget, I'm always supposed to ask. We're out of time. Anything else you just want our viewers to know?
No, just make sure that everybody understands that the election, I'm not in a special election or any of those types of things. The election for this position is on June 7th, is the primary. If no one gets a majority plus one vote, then the top two vote getters will go on to the November general election. And so I know this election cycle is going to be very strange because we got all the special elections that are included, and I'm hoping that people don't get election and fatigue as we're going through this, because we need everybody to participate.
A Fresno school board special election,
correct,
and a congressional special election,
correct.
And then also what's going to be different this time, I think, is every voter will get a mail ballot.
Yeah, well, we started that in the last cycle, though. That's something that was done in the county, and now it's across the state. And so I really, really, really like that process. It eliminates, the excuses that I used to hear being a voting advocate. You get your ballot at home. You can sit at your kitchen table. You can be in your car, complete it, put it back in the envelope, sign the back of it. No stamp needed. Put it either in the U.S. mail, or they have the drop boxes all over the county. So it really is really, really user convenient to be able to vote.
There's a lot of debate out there, that people should have to work to vote. They should have to get up and drive down there, and they want to make it harder. But I just think it's great we've reached this point where any person who wants to vote gets to vote. There's no excuse. Now, if you don't vote, it's your fault.
Right, correct. I mean, there was all types of legitimate impediments before. People working. You got your people who are working who drive. Truck driver who winds up is registered in Fresno County. Election day may be in, who knows, Texas or somewhere. How do they try to get back? And so that eliminates all those types of.
So it looks like we might have a ballot for a month, maybe.
Oh yeah, we're by law we have to receive our ballots 30 days prior to the election.
Everybody will get them. You got a
Yeah.
month to vote, month to fill it in. No stamp excuse,
Right.
no excuse. So
And with the vote centers, it makes it easy. I mean, you can go in the day of
go in the day of, too.
day of and change your registrations, change your address. So if you've recently moved, yeah, the vote centers are very, very, very convenient.
yeah. So anybody could vote. Think about when you're voting, think about Daren Miller, Daren with one R,
Right.
running for Fresno County Superintendent of Schools. It's not a job that you hear a ton about, but it's probably one of the most important positions, just like a sheriff or a mayor or something like that, maybe more important. For our
I would say
entire-
it's more important because the one thing that all of us have, whether we are President of the United States or we're one of our homeless brothers and sisters living on the street, is we have education.
Yep.
And so if we put it in that kind of context, I would say that those of us who are in the field of education play a very, very, very vital role into how society, what happens on the long term. And so I'm ready to take on that challenge, and I look forward to it.
Very good. Our guest is Daren Miller. Remember his name till June the 7th. I'm going to have you back if you have time.
Sure.
And we'll talk about it more, how the campaign develops, and get a more idea what the county superintendent does and what the demands are going to be, which probably will change a lot between now and June 7th. So we'll be back with more Newsmakers right after this.
CentralValleyTalk.com. CentralValleyTalk.com.